joining us today. My name is Amanda Golden, and I am the Program Manager in the Kelleher Center for Entrepreneurship in the Macomb School of Business. The Kelleher Center exists to encourage entrepreneurial thinking through outstanding teaching, research, engagement, and experiential learning. We offer inspiration, resources, and opportunities that help all students on campus develop the skills needed to launch a venture or to innovate within established organizations as they begin their professional careers. We are so excited to be part of the Kendra Scott Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute Women's Summit and to have our exciting panelists joining us. Vanessa Ogle is the founder and CEO of Enseo, one of the fastest growing companies in America providing technology services to people places, including hotels and schools. Vanessa graduated with degrees in marketing from the Macomb School of Business and Spanish language and culture from the College of Liberal Arts at the University of Texas at Austin. Blanca Lesmes is the co-founder and CEO of BB Imaging and Healthcare Consulting, which strives to make healthcare more accessible to women and to achieve excellence in patient care through ultrasound imaging and consulting services. Blanca received her undergraduate degree in international business and Spanish from St. Edward's University and her MBA from the Macomb School of Business. Rajya Atluri is a recent graduate of the Macomb School of Business and the College of Liberal Arts, earning degrees from the Canfield Business Honors Program in Macomb's and Plan 2 program in Liberal Arts. While at UT, she co-founded Swayy and in November 19 won first place at Disrupt Texas, the undergraduate pitch competition hosted by the Kelleher Center for Entrepreneurship. She is currently working at a startup in California. And last but not least, Vaishnavi Lakshmanan is currently enrolled as a public health major in the College of Natural Sciences. She is the founder of boxEDu, a box subscription making test preparation for college admittance more affordable and accessible. In spring 2020, Vaishnavi participated in the first cohort of the 40 Acres Founders Pre-Accelerator program offered through the Kelleher Center for Entrepreneurship and came in first place at the end of semester pitch competition. Thank you all for being here with us and willing to share your experiences and guidance to help encourage other female founders to believe in themselves and pursue their entrepreneurial passions. We know that there are both external and internal barriers faced by women when considering whether or not to pursue launching a venture. Typical internal barriers, which appear to stem from a place of internal doubt, include defying social expectations, impostor syndrome, owning your accomplishments, balancing business and family life, and coping with a fear of failure. I'd like to start our conversation with each of you describing a little bit about your entrepreneurial journeys. Where did the idea for your startup come from? What were the biggest internal barriers you had to overcome in building your ventures? And Vanessa, I'd like to start with you on this question.
Well, I had a startup that started 20 years ago, so it was quite a long time ago, and the business norms for women 20 years ago was significantly different than it is today, which I'm so excited to see these incredible young entrepreneurs here on the panel with me. I'm honored to be here with them on the panel. I didn't know that I couldn't do it. So fear of failure wasn't ever anything that I saw because I didn't allow myself to accept that that was a possibility. If I'd known then what I knew now, I might have made some different decisions because it's hard. And all those things that they're worried about that you mentioned, there is fear of failure. There absolutely, imposter syndrome is real. I lived it every day for more than a decade as the CEO of a business, wondering every day when someone was going to realize I didn't know what I was doing. But the reality is I do know what I'm doing, and I'm a great CEO and I'm a great entrepreneur. And as soon as I recognized that and just relaxed into who I am, I built an incredible team around me. And that team, instead of, they challenge me all the time, they support me, they do their thing. But really, it's just been a fabulous journey. And to be sitting here again 2 decades later in the middle of what is significant crisis, but with this incredible team around me because of having gone through these hardships personally, it's been a fabulous journey.
Blanca, what about you?
Yeah, so I've been in business for 15 years, and I would say 15-year startup. That's really resonating with me, Vanessa. And again, I'm super happy to be here with all of you ladies. So when I started the organization, I was really trying to solve I actually saw an opportunity in the ultrasound space. My husband was a sonographer at the time. I grew up in a family in the food service industry. So my parents had a mom and pop restaurant. It was not fancy, it was not Instagrammable. We probably would have closed if Instagram was available back then because it was so lowbrow. But I learned a lot for what it meant to run a business and have a team and hire team members and that type of thing. So I always knew I was going to have my own thing. I knew it was not going to be in food service, but I didn't know what that was going to be. And so I think I was always kind of looking for what would it be like to have my own business. So I always had that in my mind. But I will say when I started the healthcare company, I did not have a healthcare background at all. And I absolutely struggled with the idea of that I was at the helm of this small organization, when it's one and, a husband and then one extra employee. You really, it was hard to get that thought in my mind that I was at the top of it when there was only two people. It didn't feel that way. I actually didn't put president or CEO on my business card until about, I think it was probably 6 years ago. I just didn't feel comfortable with it. And now I think, God, what was I thinking? Like, I sit in some of these meetings sometimes and I'm like, really? I was worried about not meeting up to that, And so I think that's something that as women, we battle that, our own critic being the biggest stopping point. So that's kind of a bit about my journey.
Wonderful. Rajya?
Sure. So while at UT, I founded a startup that was seeking to bring more sustainability to the fashion industry. And so the way we were trying to do that is help college women rent and share clothes between their peers for different events. And so I started working on this my sophomore year, and we were able to raise a little bit of money, get paying customers. Unfortunately, during my senior year, that's exactly, when COVID hit, and events were canceled and college campuses were shut down. And pretty much overnight, we kind of realized that no one really had a need for what we were doing. And kind of in that moment, in some ways, it's like the worst possible situation because it's all of like the fears I had of like the business failing and like it not being successful kind of come true. But and obviously, it was really hard to go through that. But kind of going through that experience, I feel a lot more resilient in that this like worst case scenario kind of in a way happened. And so I feel better equipped to kind of advance my entrepreneurial journey from here on out. And currently now I'm working at a startup in Silicon Valley that has like a similar mission on sustainability. And so that's kind of how I transitioned from my kind of founder journey to kind of my working at a startup journey.
That's great. Vaishnavi?
Yeah, so I've always been passionate about education. It's just been my thing, like ever since I was in high school. And so I've always, been involved when it comes to like curriculum or like mentorship and things like that. And also I've always been kind of like irked by like the gap in the education industry. Because I came from like a Title I school background where a lot of my peers, couldn't afford the same things I could afford. And so just seeing that over and over again, like getting to college, seeing the same thing is kind of why I decided to start my entrepreneurial journey with boxEDu. And it was a little bit hard for me, I think, just like starting off, just because I felt like I didn't have the education. I felt like I wasn't a business major. So I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. It took me a while to even seek mentorship. I think that was one of my barriers too, was just like to ask for help. And even then, just like understanding that a lot of people have different opinions. And so you don't have to like take everyone's opinion into account. You just have to, just like think about it and think about your business and things like that. And so because of that, I was just like, I started becoming like really encouraged to try new things, like applying to the accelerator. That was something I wasn't going to do, and I ended up doing it. And so it's been like a lot of ups and downs, kind of that barrier of just like thinking I wouldn't have the right education to start a business, or I wouldn't even try to have a successful business. But I'm here now, and it's going great, and I'm definitely like working on it. COVID definitely has halted things a little bit, but there's still stuff going on. So yeah.
Yeah, and I love stories like that where I hear students say, I wasn't going to try that thing, and then I did, and it worked out really well for me because you came in first place at the pitch competition for that pre-accelerator. And, it was because you pushed yourself to do it. So congrats. And I'm glad you did apply for that. We know that mentors and role models are important tools in encouraging those individuals typically underrepresented in entrepreneurship to explore this professional avenue. So who were some of your mentors and role models while you worked to explore and launch your businesses? What impacts did having or not having a mentor who you felt represented your experiences have on your journey? And, if you can think of, what sort of advice did they give you to help encourage you? Blanca, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so interestingly, I had children pretty young. I had children in my mid-20s, and funny enough, their preschool teacher was the person who really saw that I was trying to kill it and, doing this crazy mom balance thing. And I was kind of failing at doing both. And she was really the first person that encouraged me to really be who I was unapologetically. And she was the one who told me to go to McCombs. She was like, you've got to go get your degree, do it now while the kids are young. They're going to need you when they're teenagers. She was so right. My kids are now 16 and 18 and in college. And that was really key. That's evolved for me now. One of the things I used to shy away from in terms of mentorship was, I don't know how to say this in a delicate way, but like the traditional white male. Like I really shied away from that. And now I just recently have added some formal advisors to my team, and it is amazing what it is to have that perspective and this idea that, wait, there's an easier path if someone can walk you in that door. And I think I didn't realize you could do that without it seeming opportunistic, that there really are people who are willing to help you. So I think there's this balance of finding people who are like you, who can, encourage you along that path. But then I also think that there's some allies out there that you shouldn't dismiss, who could maybe make the path easier. Like, it's just two different types.
I love that. And I love the focus on allies as well, because I think that's an important piece that many people don't think of.
Yeah, agreed.
Rajya, what about you?
Yeah, so one amazing mentor that I had while at UT was actually Professor Jan Ryan. So I took her Women in Entrepreneurship class my senior year, and it was a really transformative experience. I would recommend it to anyone. And something that really stood out to me about her was that I had a lot of different mentors and people who gave advice, but she seemed to be really supportive and excited about me as an individual and not just an idea I had. So it wasn't really all about the startup or all about what I was working on, but like me as a person and like me as someone who's trying to learn. And I really felt that difference. And something about like her class and like the way she taught is that she really had us learn by experiencing, like doing things and really in a hands-on way. And I think that's the best kind of experience with learning that I've had at UT. And especially like in relation to entrepreneurship, I think one of the best things you can do is like actually make something.
That's great. Vaishnavi?
Yeah, so I've had, I guess, like my fair share of mentors, but I think I had a mentor over the summer. I did a fellowship with like this PNG program, and I had a mentor, and it was the first time I had a mentor in like my industry of just kind of like that packaging, shipping type of situation. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like I'm that person that needs to hear like cold, hard facts. Otherwise, I won't address my problems. And so I would just be talking to her, and she'd be like, if you want to do it, you wouldn't make excuses to do it. Like you'll plan your life into it, and you'll put effort into it and you'll do it. And so she told me, she really like pushed me in terms of like cold hard facts. And she also, you know, anytime she would talk to me about the future, like she'd be like, well, you're a founder and that's a really big deal. And just like getting to this place in your life, that means that you can try to accomplish more as well, whatever you put your mind to. And I don't know why, I just feel like I really needed to hear that like multiple times. But it was like a really interesting experience. And I think just that like push, like I think about it every day, like her piece of advice, it's always in the back of my head, like anytime I do anything. So yeah, she's really great.
That's great. And Vanessa, I imagine the mentoring landscape for women has changed since you started 20 years ago.
You know, it certainly has, but I think at the same time, I'm really going to go back to what Blanca said. I'm going to encourage people to find people who support them and who believe in them and who have wisdom. I don't care what color. I'm Latina, but I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if it's an old white guy. If it's an old white guy and he's going to teach me what I need to know. And most of my mentors were old white guys. They were my dad's business partners and the people that ran the business with him, because they saw me working in his business since I was 19 years old. And when I graduated from UT at, you know, the crazy age of, 20 years old, I was actually 19 when I graduated. And so
Wow.
They saw me as a teenager coming in just full of ideas and excitement. And they understood me enough to know that they could just, they could just calm me down a little bit, get me focused a little bit, ask me, okay, all right, well, we get that you want to push, but what is the ROI going to be on that? The what? What's the EPS going to be on that? The what? The earnings per share. I don't care about earnings per share. I just want to finish this product because I can sell it. Give me the resources to finish the product. But they did absolutely mentor me. And then once I started my business, I found this really wonderful attorney. And she also was a graduate of the UT Law School, Brenda Kelleher. And she was just this fierce advocate, not just in the legal boardroom, but also just as a human being. She was a fierce advocate, and she wanted me to be a bigger, fiercer advocate for myself. And I saw how unapologetically she advocated for me, and it made me want to do more of that for myself. And then about 5 years, maybe 7 years ago now, I joined an organization called YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization. And probably one of the most transformative, I love that word, Rajya, thank you. One of the most transformative things that's happened to my career, because I am now sitting at the table with all of these other CEOs, and I'm in a small group with eight CEOs every month. And we sit down and talk about, we talk about everything. We talk about our health, we talk about our families, we talk about our businesses, and it's this raw, unplugged version of everything that's really happening. And when you can be vulnerable and really say what's happening and what you're excited about and what you're scared about, terrified about, threatened by, and get honest feedback from people who care nothing for anything, not for their jobs, not for your job, just about you. So anywhere you can get someone that is a valuable advocate just for you, that they believe in you and that they just want to see you succeed, that is a wonderful place to get feedback and coaching. And now if you can find, now there are some women CEOs out there, there are some women in the business world now. So absolutely, if you can get some people in the business world that you feel like have a similar journey to yours, and they're willing to spend time with you, that's wonderful. But remember, there should be more of you coming in now than there are of us in the field. And so you can't wait for there to be enough women in the field to mentor you. Find great people that you need to listen to. And that's the best place to get coaching, but it is incredibly valuable.
I love the theme across all of your answers, touching on the importance of finding people who believe in you and what you're working on. Because I think that connection is so important and goes a long way in making the mentor relationships successful and helping you both get the most out of it. That's great.
Yeah, and if I could just add one tiny little thing on, and that's,
Absolutely.
Rajya, it's not about the business idea being successful, right? Because in any company, do you know the most successful ideas are not the ones that I say yes to. The most successful ideas over 20 years are the ones that I said no to. And so there's always the failed idea here and there, and just making your way all the way through that, that's the journey. So I'm so glad to see you with such a great attitude where you are, because you're doing exactly the right thing. And that is what's going to make you resilient and successful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Vanessa didn't realize it, but that's a great segue into our next topic. Wonderful. So we know that one of the biggest barriers women have to overcome in pursuing entrepreneurship, or really any big step in their professional pursuit, is a feel of failure and disappointing themselves or others. I believe that this became particularly important in today's climate, when we see many founders having to make significant pivots to answer to the changing economic and health climate due to COVID. And I know, several of us have touched on that already throughout today's panel. But how have all of you dealt with failures and disappointments that you've experienced? How, if at all, has COVID impacted you? And how did the experiences you have previously help you make it through the obstacles you've experienced because of the current situation we're facing with COVID? And Rajya, I'll start with you, because you had a very great example earlier in the panel.
Yeah, as I touched on before, it definitely was hugely disappointing when my startup failed. And it's something that I put a lot of time into, and I was really excited about it. So that was definitely something that I struggled with this past spring. But I think for me, I was like looking for a way to like kind of pull myself out of this feelings of like frustration and sadness. And for me, that was really evaluating like, what is it that I liked about doing this startup? Like, what were the skills that I enjoyed learning? What made me excited every day to work on it? And for me, like a lot of it was like creativity. Like I enjoyed social media. I enjoyed doing different things like that. And I enjoyed like talking to people and getting their feedback. And so I thought, why don't I try to use this as a way to kind of try to find those things in a startup, and so I can still enjoy those things that I liked at my own startup, and just continue to learn and grow in these ways. And then eventually down the road, like maybe like I can kind of maybe pursue the founder journey again someday. But in the meantime, I still wanted to kind of keep doing the things that I liked. I don't think there's a reason just because your startup fails that you can't like keep trying to learn in the things you like.
Absolutely. Vaishnavi.
Yeah. So for me, when it comes to failure, I tend to take my failures like very personally, and just like really let it affect me. And so one thing I really learned, I think especially from like the startup experience, is, I used to let it like affect my work. Like I used to always think about it. But I realized that, nobody has a traditional path. So that's something I feel like that's been ingrained in us, like from like, I don't even know when, but just like the stereotype that there's a traditional path and you always have to do this traditional path. And I really understood that there's so many ways to achieve your goals. There's so many ways to like address problems, fix issues. And you could be like looking at other people and thinking they're doing it all, but you don't know what what challenges they're facing as well. And so I just like really started talking to people. Actually, I think networking really helped me when it came to overcoming my failures. I talked to so many like founders, CEOs, like all ages, like all like ages of startups and everything. And just like hearing about how like different people have overcome different obstacles just really helped me. And it still like motivates me to this day to overcome like any issues or problems that I have with my startup. So yeah, just like talking to people for sure.
That's great. Vanessa.
Well, my core business right now is the sale of technology into hotels and schools.
So there were some impacts.
And we thought, this is a great secondary business to get into, schools, because of course schools isn't on the same economic trajectory as the hotel and the commercial segment and the retail sector and real estate sector. But who could have seen COVID coming? And of course, the schools were hit pretty dramatically. So I had a brand new product that was launching, what was a safety product, that it's a button that the teachers wear on their neck. And when they have a problem in the classroom, they can push that button. It geolocates them and then sends a note out to first responders immediately, who is in trouble and where are they in trouble, so that first responders can get there as soon as possible. So we had 50 schools. We just gotten it to 3 schools. We had it go 3 school districts, and we had it going into 50 school districts this last summer. And of course, everybody pulled their funding and said, we've got to figure out how to teach our kids. We can't, we don't we don't even know if they're going to be alive, much less they can hit the button. So we have to bear down on some fundamentals. Our hotel clients were tragically affected. And there's news everywhere, right? That every single major hotel company had furloughed 80 to 90% of their team. Hotels across the country are closing. So it made massive impacts to the business. But wisdom does count. Previous learnings do matter. It does make a difference, I promise. I started my business right before 9/11, and we were in the financial services industry. And then I was there in some other sectors in 2008 when the market crash happened. So the one thing that I knew was we had to act quickly. It was a little bit complicated by the fact that my daughters got sick. I got sick with COVID. So all 3 of us were sick, and we were, I was trying to keep my kids safe and healthy, hooked up to oxygen at home while I was on the phone in a meeting much like this, but with all of my team. I set them in 3 different meetings so that I could have announcements to my friends and family about layoffs, furloughs, major, massive changes to the business to be able to survive until we didn't know when, because we didn't know. So instead of waiting too long and running the cash out, we made really aggressive moves very, very quickly. And it was about communication, right? Communicating transparently, letting them know we're going to be here to fight for you to bring you back, but we just don't know. So you're going to be on the team that stays, you're going to be on the team that waits at home, and this is what we're going to do, and it's the plan. And again, all along, I've got my daughter on a dog bed behind me with oxygen up her nose. And anyone can tell you that, you said, Vaishnavi, you said that you took your, failures personally. It's personal. It is personal. Anyone who says it's just business, I don't know who that person is. They must be a private equity guy, right? Because they're not a founder. They're not an entrepreneur, because it is personal. You've put your heart and your soul and your sweat and your tears into this business. You've got your friends and family to put their money into this business. It's personal. So, and when your friends who you care about, or your family that you care about, or just people that work hard that you care about, when you have to tell them that they have to go home, it's personal and it's horrible. And I think that is one of the ways that women just thrive in times like these, because it's not a weakness that it's personal. It's our strength. It's absolutely our strength, because the people that I sent home, they knew that we would be doing everything we could to bring them back. They knew, and they waited, and they tried, and the people that were here, we have developed more new products in the last 6 months than we've developed in the last 3 years combined. People have worked their butts off from home. My people don't need me looking over their shoulder, because it's personal. They care. They're invested. And we created a culture before we had a need. We had a culture with accountability and independence, and it makes all the difference. And that's how you survive in these tough times. But yeah, when you fail, it hurts. And when you stub your toe, it's awful, and it's real pain. It's not fake. And anybody who ever says it's just business, I don't I don't get it.
Blanca, healthcare, I imagine there were some impacts on your company as well.
Yeah, COVID has really been it feels insane. It feels like it's been years and a day, like both at the same time in this really weird way. I think what it has highlighted for me is that as a leader in an organization, whether you have 2 people that respond to you or that reply to you 80 or 800, I think that it's very important to take that your voice is it is a tool that can be used for good and for not good. And it is incredibly moving to realize that you have the power to tell people, send people into a burning building. And I think that was the very humbling message that came out of that for me, is that we were out of the protective gear. We see pregnant women as, it's what we do. We do high risk populations. So, them just not getting healthcare is really not an option. There was a lot of unknown, and really within, a weekend, we are kind of making things up because no one knew anything and sending them back in. And so having that incredible responsibility of knowing, like, I don't even have all the answers of what this means for them. And still, because I'm saying go to work on Monday, they show up to work on Monday. Like, you realize the incredible responsibility that is. And that weighed very heavy on me in those first weeks of March, like incredibly heavy. I was feeling incredibly guilty, and like, I'm an administrator, right? So I'm in the safety of my home working remotely, and I've got a team across Texas and Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma. And some of these people I've never even met in person, and they're still listening to my directive that we're going to go back in, and I'm trying really hard to get you PPE. I don't know when we're going to get it. Please do the best you can. Wash your hands. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's the most absurd messaging. And I think that it still kind of bugs me a little bit. I feel like I've got a little bit of residual, like, oh man, that's so heavy, because I think I realized what my leadership, like the power of my own leadership. And I think as women, if we can recognize and harness the power of our own leadership, I think we could do amazing, momentous things. In the same way Vanessa's saying, like, we did more in the last 6 months than we have in the last 3 years. Like, I think that speaks to it. Like, what does it mean to be leading in our best? Like, if we're using all of our best leadership skills, what does that instill in others when we do that? And so I think that's what COVID really did for me. It has scared the crap out of me. It continues to scare the crap out of me, quite frankly, because I've got team members that are in healthcare, and I do worry, I think, like a mom in that sense, in that, speaking to that, it is personal. These people are, I'm providing for their livelihood. There is an exchange of value happening here. And I have to try to ensure to the best of my ability that their environment is safe for them. And that's a very interesting thing to contemplate. Mm-hmm. And maybe to over contemplate, a little bit. So I think that's been the key learning for me.
That's great. I love that what came up was that when you approach those obstacles, it can feel personal. Like, that's okay. Because I feel like sometimes we tell women and young women, like, don't take the failure personally, but it's okay to take it personally. You're putting so much of yourself into that. Of course you're going to take it personally, but learn the lessons and figure out a way to move on, I think, was another really great lesson from a lot of your responses, was learn from that and figure out how to incorporate the lessons as you move into, as you move forward in your pursuits. I think that's great. So the next question is more, I would say, practical, because we have students watching from all majors that are interested in business and entrepreneurship, but business in general as well. And a lot of you have experience with either business classes or utilizing resources on campus. So what business classes or concepts do you recommend for those students to explore if they feel like that's an area where they need to to build their skill set a little bit. And I think Vaishnavi, we're starting with you, if I'm remembering our rotation correctly.
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to say is like, don't let your background stop you. Like your background, you know, if you want to do something, like do it, go for it, try it, see if you want to do it. That was my issue, right? I thought like I came from a science background. I was like, this is not going to work. But yeah, and so I would really like in terms of like resources, I think like mentorship and just really talking to people is what can like start like your curiosity, like pique your interest. And I think also really analyzing just like what you're passionate about. So I think like it really helps to think about your passions when you hear people talk about their passions. And so even like simple like workshops, people coming, I know like at UT, like somebody from Alamo Draft House came, I believe, to talk. Like I remember that.
At Tim League, yes.
Yeah. And it's just like really motivating to hear people speak about their businesses, and then just like receiving that mentorship to actually understand like what you want to do and why you want to do it too. And so definitely like I would recommend like doing workshops and just like one-on-one sessions with mentors.
Great. Vanessa?
Well, workshops are wonderful. And the access that we all have to some of the brightest minds in the world just through the TED Talks world, it's amazing. And so there is a tremendous amount of ongoing education that you can get to in this digital world, this online world, YouTube world, where you can literally just click and listen to someone's story and get some really incredible value from that. I'll touch a little bit back on the Macomb side of the world. You know, one of the classes that I found the most practical use for was international business law. There was so much great, very gritty, very detailed things that I would not have understood and may have made some huge missteps in as it relates to exporting, importing, shipping, the importance of those tiny little letters, FOB, X-Works, at the bottom of an invoice so that you knew what the real cost of what you were either buying or selling was going to be on one side or the other. But there was a lot of just detail things. So sometimes just taking a class is the right way to go. And so don't shy away from some classes that you might think are the drier classes. I think it's sometimes much easier on the softer side of marketing to be able to consume some of that information from a seminar perspective or from a storyline perspective. But you know, the actual coursework actually, well, and Blanca knows more about that since she got her MBA, but it can really be helpful.
Blanca?
Okay, so I will say I've got a short list of like must. I would say take a finance class. Take a finance class. You'll hate every minute of it. Some of you will love it. Some of you will love it. But for those of you who like your first reaction is like, I'm not going to do that. You're the ones who need to take a finance class.
Yes.
Take a finance. Make yourself do it. Make yourself do it. It's so essential. You don't have to master it. You just need to know that concept exists so you can go find somebody to implement it for you. So please take a finance class. I would say like of anything I wish I would take again, because it is my weak point. And when I meet women in business, most of the time what they're complaining about is not understanding some concept in finance. So I'm going to encourage you guys to that. There used to be a class called New Venture Creation where you could kind of do this startup exercise. I don't know if that still exists.
There is at both the graduate level and undergraduate level.
Okay. That is a spectacular opportunity to be with business majors and non-business majors on thinking about a startup. Even if you don't have an idea, you could jump on a project and watch someone else let it evolve. So I think that I would totally think about that. And then the Herb Kelleher has the Entrepreneurship Center. So if you need to talk to a mentor, they actually exist on campus already. I've long mentored there. I'm off this semester. I'm taking a little break, but there's office hours that run pretty much every day, Monday through Friday. And I've met some really interesting fellow mentors there that I have connected with. So I would really encourage you to use that resource. It's on campus, it's in the McCombs building, like you could do it around your classwork. Would totally encourage that. And then the last one, I know it's a list, but I feel so passionately about this piece of it.
Great.
But Dr. Lewis Martins teaches innovation and creativity. And I should say, I don't know if it's still called that, but there's an innovation and creativity class somewhere on campus. I think for those of you who also may not be business majors, but you're really like in that mindset, you know, where you're thinking like, I've got a really great idea. It can really help you harness that and start packaging it into a business format. And you can meet other people from the business school who you could add to your team. So I would say kind of look into those resources because they could be really helpful, especially when you're starting your journey.
Yeah, and I will say the entrepreneurs in residence through the Kelleher Center are still having meetings with students virtually right now. And there is an undergraduate level class that is innovation and entrepreneurship, which is likely very similar to the class Blanca that you mentioned and is open to both business majors and non-business majors. Rajya, any suggestions?
Yes. So earlier I mentioned the Women in Entrepreneurship class. I really enjoyed that. So I definitely recommend that. Another class I wanted to touch on is I took Longhorn Startup Lab taught by Joshua Bear. And that class, you basically have to kind of like try out to get in, apply, sorry. And but during the course of the class, you can like earn real class credit for working on your startup. And so that was a really cool opportunity. And it provides like a weekly mentorship kind of system. So that way you're always having like mentors who are checking on you. And I think the cool thing about a class like that is sometimes you can get a lot done in like a single mentorship session with someone new, but it also really helps to have mentors who are consistent, who you see every week, and you can really dive into those deeper and bigger problems with that, you know, might take too long to explain in like a 30-minute session. And so having that option too with these mentors that I was able to kind of meet with every week was super, super helpful. So I definitely recommend that class as well. And then in general with CBHP, I was able to take a few different classes kind of in regards to all of different kind of different parts of business. And something really helpful that has been helpful to me over the years has been like kind of being familiar with Excel and knowing Excel in terms of like organization and like running like a numbers-based business and not just, you know, on intuition, which is definitely important, but also using data. And so that's something else I would recommend, taking a class where you have to use Excel even if you don't really like it.
That's great. These are all wonderful suggestions. And this has been such an inspiring conversation.